All right, so my name is Dagmar Oktaptsova, and I'm an international spiritual healer, teacher, speaker, and author. And basically, I'm in Lakewood, Colorado, and what I bring to the table is my spiritual understanding of what's happening in today's world, the bigger picture, so to speak, the spiritual insight and things like that. I do a lot of quantum healing with people. I facilitate healings as well as I teach quantum healing to whoever's interested in learning, specifically healers. I have a package specifically for healers called Heal the Healer to help them with their vibration. And so I understand the whole concept of fear versus, where we are in the vibrational tone scale. And I go over that a little bit later and so forth to kind of give you guys some idea about all that stuff. So that's kind of what I do and who I am in a nutshell. And I've been in practice for about 15 plus years in my healing practice. So Anjali, would you like to go ahead next and introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Dagmar. My name is Anjali, and I do Akashic healing. And like you, I am an international healer and life enhancement guide. And I'm based out of Golden, Colorado. And I have been doing this, I think, my whole life in one form or another. And what I help people with is anything that involves unburdening their soul, anything that has been carried over outside of our conscious awareness or well known to our present life and conscious living, that which is holding us back, anything that feels like obstacles, resistance, blockage, questions about patterns, recurring patterns, especially when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to what feels like karmic kicks in the butt. That's kind of where I can come in with a larger arc point of view as to what the soul's entire experience has been since its inception. And that can really, really help pinpoint exactly what is causing fear, anger, rage, anything that is stored in our cellular memory, in our earthly body, whatever is interrupting our energetic system or blocking the flow of our energetic system. And then at the highest level, which is the spiritual level, which is where everything sources from anywho, that's all the kind of work that I do. And then when the work is done, the Akashic record is updated. So what we've pinpointed, identified for healing, has no need to recur. So basically, it is a form of spiritual freedom and spiritual relaxation.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Anjali.
You're welcome.
Welcome as a panelist out here today. And then Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks for having me tonight, Dagmar. So just a little bit about my background. I'm 25 plus years in the telecom corporate industry. Had a second big awakening after 9/11 and started looking at things like, why are we doing this? Why would we do this? As Angelique mentioned, seeing patterns that no longer served me. Kind of through my experience, have really helped people over the last 15 plus years in, I call it unshakable courage, and helping people with the assessment of the reality of what's happening, how to break away from that fear and move through it through courage, and so that you can ultimately live in power. So I've created 3 systems. I'm all about people. So soft skill strategies for bottom line results is one of the consulting programs that I've done for many, many years with corporations and individuals. Also helping others take their business and voice from a whisper to roar. So why are you holding yourself back? What is holding yourself back? Helping people get kind of clear on that so that they can step up and be the best version of themselves. And then the third thing is unshakable courage. That's a lot of my experience, helping people to assess where they are. Again, help them with the roadmap and the action plan.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kim. You just left, oh, there you are. Lost the picture. Are you okay? Thank you for your introduction, Kim. And are you in, you're not in Colorado, right? You're somewhere else. Okay, so we'll let Kim kind of recover from her little cough. So anyway, so those are the three panelists that we have here today. And I think it's a great group here to discuss what we're about to discuss. I think we're sort of very much in alignment with each other about what we're doing. And I mean, yeah, the quantum healing I do is the same, you know, trying to resolve patterns. I do a lot of past life regressions, actually, which, you know, contribute to our present time as to what we're actually creating in present time. I find people are not aware, but we're energetically recreating certain unresolved experiences from our past lifetimes. And that's happening more so than we realize. And I also understand very well the whole fear factor and, you know, how to move out of that and so forth. So I'm going to pose our first question here. In light of what is happening here today, would you guys say that we are in a COVID-19 virus pandemic or a fear pandemic? I want to, how about you start, Anjali? What is your opinion about this whole pandemic we're going? I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. Let's just say that, okay? In my years of being on this earth, I haven't seen such a pandemic in my life. And especially about a cold virus, okay?
Well, you know, my husband survived. He survived his China trip in 2003, literally landing and beginning his work in China the day the World Health Organization announced that SARS was now the going concern, right? And it's interesting because I had warned him, and I was kind of hysterical before he left the morning he was leaving to get on the plane to tell him, don't go, you're going to get sick, it's going to be horrible. And I didn't know anything about SARS, I didn't know anything about anything. And of course, you know, to this day, he still says, geez, I should have listened. But, you know, the point of why this is, I think, defined as a pandemic is because of the contagion rate. The rate of infection is it's virulent. And
describe the word differently.
Basically, for most strains of flu, for most strains of, and even SARS, for every one person who is during the incubation period and considered contagious, the likelihood statistically is a spread to at least one more person. And I think the numbers are about 1.2 to 1.5. Now, the coronavirus comes in at above 3. Okay. So that tells you that pandemic is about the nature of the spread. Okay. The nature of the spread. So obviously that's going to generate a different level of fear, and for good reason, and definitely for good reason when you're looking at biological, when you're looking at, you know, the biological aspects of how cellular disease and transmission of things that are going to impact our systems, and the fact that I think the nature of the respiratory damage is terrible. My daughter, who is currently working in the elder care facility in Bear Creek, told me just a couple of days ago that 2 patients had been segregated because they spiked fevers over 100. One was almost 104 point something, so extremely high. And their blood work got sent out, and normally in a 24-hour turnaround, it's been about a 5 to 6 day turnaround, and the first patient has come back not COVID-19, but has come back with H3N5.
What is that?
Which is, I believe it's a form of swine flu. It's, again, it has respiratory debilitation, but it doesn't have the same infection rate. It's more around that 1.2 to 1.5, and it's not the spread at a factor of 3 in terms of a likelihood. So the reality.
So do you believe that this entire fear pandemic out there around this whole COVID-19 is actually warranted?
I feel anything that threatens our safety, anything that threatens our safety at any point in time is going to go right to the earliest part of our conscious awareness system in our brain.
You
and
talk
we call
about
that
connecting with our survival.
Right, because
Okay, right.
it's messing with our safety and it's messing with our survival.
But see, what I'm wondering about though, okay, is like you compare the numbers with like a flu, okay? There's deaths for that as well. And I'm looking at, for example, I mean, I understand that this thing spreads faster.
Yeah.
But looking at like the numbers from a flu, there's like yearly 700,000 deaths almost worldwide from flu, from influenza. And so looking at that in comparison to worldwide 14,000 for COVID-19, and you're looking things like, what is going on with this? Why are we freaking out like this? And why are we not talking about the flu or whatever?
The fact is there's always going to be epidemiological threats to our safety because we are a human society and we live in close proximity with each other, with animals that we are in stewardship for, with our pets. So, this is just part of our biological evolution for the human body and the human constitution to be subjected to challenges at biological level and develop an immunity when you survive. So, so when you're looking at the infection pool, not everyone's going to die. Everyone who contracts it is not going to die, obviously. But for those who get through it, whether their symptoms have been mild to discomforting or more on the serious side, they still get to come away with the biological gift of an immunity for something that showed up as a bigger biological test for our collective bodies. So there's always going to be threats. There's always going to be threats.
Well, absolutely, but that's what makes me wonder, though.
Yeah.
Why we are freaking out so much over COVID-19.
I feel there is a statistical element. There is a statistical element that allows this strain in modern times today that shows up. It actually is presenting differently. It is presenting differently because of its virulence. And that in itself could just be the whole plate of the reason for fear. But when you have media, when you have false information, when you have confusing information, when people are not receiving a sense of comfort and aspects where they can reconsider the validity and the reality of objective safety, then you know what happens when a group of like-mindedness can come together. It's going to amplify.
Right.
And that's what we're experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that definitely it's amplified. And it may be, this is my theory on it as far as understanding. I mean, you're familiar with ascension, right? And the process of ascension that we're in. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically moving higher in vibration into a different dimension. And as far as I understand, our vibrations on our planet have been increasing since about 2003. And so we're actually spinning faster. And I think that perhaps this whole corona thing has to do, and the fear thing has to do with the fact that we're spinning faster, that people are much more spreading the negative thought, the fear faster, okay? As much as we're, for example, manifesting positive things faster too. because we're actually moving faster, because we're in higher vibrations. And so I've experienced this, you know, like manifestation happens much quicker than it has in past, where we think something and it all of a sudden it happens, right? And for those things that don't happen, we usually have blockages around that. So, you know, but when we are free to manifest something and we think it and it just happens. And I think the negative things that come up also spread quicker. We manifest things faster. You know, so all of a sudden when we all are in collaboration of these thoughts, right, and we're putting them out there, we're spreading it all faster. We're manifesting the reality of it. Yeah.
Just here in our third and fourth dimension with technology, with, you know, even the event that we're having tonight, everything can manifest and spread that much faster. Right. The issue I think is the fact that as a human race, we're all connected to each other through those higher dimensions that we are all a part of. And I think with the way our minds are as human beings, so this is just bringing everything right back down to earth, just, you know, really right back down to earth. And who are we as human beings, and why is this so hard on us, is partly because of our evolution and the way that we've evolved in order to uphold safety, because that's really what survival of the fittest and the ability to evolve predicates on. The fact that you needed to have survived in the first place, which meant you had a different kind of safety, or you had a different kind of out that others may not have had. So you've got the issue of the fact that this is so much a part of our evolution. Just think about, from a neuroscience perspective, the way that all of our brains work as a result of how we've evolved. The natural tendency, and nobody can really help this unless you apply specifically at a conscious level with awareness, how to get over what neuroscientists call the negativity bias. So what that means is anything that threatens our safety is going to lodge into us emotionally, mentally, energetically at 5 times the amplification energy.
Interesting. For
one negative thing. So in order to be able to balance that, so that you're not stuck in living with the negativity bias overwhelming your system all the time, is for every one fear, for every one circumstance that you perceive as being negative, you need 5 or more of the same energetic strength and power of positivity to overcome the one.
Oh, I see. Right.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
So this is the negativity bias, and this is what helps explain the collective unconscious. It helps explain why what Eckhart Tolle refers to as the pain body, the collective pain body, as well as the individual pain body, has as much power as it does. So now you understand that when these things come together and they're amplifying, they already showed up at 5 times the strength for every positive aspect of our lives that we might be consciously aware of. And to be honest, each person needs to ask themselves, am I truly 5 or more times aware of the fact that I'm safe for all of the positive experiences that I'm having? Am I truly aware at that level? Because if you're not, the negativity bias takes over, and that's where this fear pandemic
well,
it's an avalanche.
Right, and the contribution to that part of it, okay, here's my understanding of this negativity bias as you talk about it, right, is that this negativity bias comes, or our fear of survival, for example, comes, or any fear, comes from our pain bodies.
Yes.
So in other words, we have actually experienced pain in certain areas. So In other words, when we're afraid for our survival, then perhaps we have had some kind of pain around not having survived so well.
That's right. So
Another
everything,
lifetime,
everything
whenever.
is a trigger.
Right.
Yes.
So it becomes a
Yes.
trigger.
Yes.
And so when you have that pain body, what I call actually incidentally an unresolved experience, okay, still in your vibration as an unresolved pain, then it is being then triggered by whatever circumstance happens
Correct.
outside of you.
I agree. Yes.
So yes, to counteract that, when I do, for example, quantum healings, what we do is we actually heal that unresolved pain, meaning that we're actually transforming the pain into wisdom for our soul. So it becomes no longer a, what do you call it? Well, a measure against a trigger, basically. It doesn't exist in your sphere anymore as a point of basically trigger, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Okay?
And I can see that, I can
Right.
definitely see that would help allow the awareness of true, actual safety.
Yes, because then
to rise to the
you don't
surface.
have that survival mechanism
Yes.
bouncing off of this pain thing over you saying, well, you know, you've experienced pain here before, you better be concerned. You don't want to go there again because it'll stress
Right.
you out, you know,
Right.
because you're not going to survive, you know, because last time you didn't survive going over there. Okay, this is what your survival mechanism does. And
That's
so
right.
when it's not there anymore, as a reference point is what I was looking for the word. When it's not there as a reference point anymore, then all of a sudden you can actually face the same exact situation and experience absolutely no fear. And I have experienced that personally.
I
I've
have
done it with
too.
my clients. It's absolutely phenomenal thing.
Yes. Yes.
You
I
know?
have too. And I am sure that everyone who is in attendance today has had that experience. And I think until you've had that kind of experience, you're not going to realize that, wow, there's something going on here. I think I want to dive deeper, and I think I want to move in this direction, because I think there's just a large segment of the population that when they completely succumb to fear, all of your choices to believe in hope and to believe in something else,
Get wiped
literally
out.
feel like they've been stolen from you.
Right.
We literally feel like they've been stolen from you, and now they're not even a part of your toolbox anymore.
Right. Exactly.
And to me, when I see this with folks, yeah. So like you recognize it for doing the quantum healing, I also can recognize for doing the Akashic work as well, to realize that choices to believe differently, to see things differently, to perceive things actually differently.
Well, sometimes you have to move out of that fear.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Okay.
And a lot of times one can't easily do that for themselves.
Right. That's very true. And that's why the healing aspect.
That's the bottom line, because
yeah.
negativity bias and predilection to fear is that overwhelming that you will render yourself to a point of paralysis.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And it actually does not serve your survival, even though it's part of your survival mechanism. It actually prevents you from surviving, actually.
Right. And the irony is, it weakens your immune system.
Absolutely. It actually puts you in a position of,
right.
you know, succumbing to basically not surviving. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my next question is then, is fear real? Is it a real threat when we're in fear? You know, is the COVID-19 virus a real threat? Or is it only a threat when we're in fear?
I think if you're talking about a biological organism, and if you want to measure health, vitality, and well-being, coronavirus easily could be described as a global leveling field. It will proceed and strike regardless of what country you live in, your race, your culture, your creed, your age. If you are out in the world and participating with other human beings as a biological organism, you're in the game. You're definitely in the game at a bodily level.
Well, I think that we're all in the game.
We are all in the game.
It's a global game right now. It's a global game. But my question is this, is it real?
Yes, yes. I do believe that fear is a visceral truth for an incarnate system. Absolutely.
Okay.
At third dimension, it comes through the body. So therefore, anything that we would dare to decide is real versus perceived, this definitely falls into the real category.
Okay. Kim, what is your opinion about that?
I think oftentimes we're conditioned to fear. You know, I know that was the case in one area of my life, you know, just being programmed by someone else's beliefs and thoughts and that sort of thing from the time I was born until I had my awakening after 9/11. And what happened to me is, you know, I kind of questioned that fear when I was feeling it. And I think you would also probably agree that sometimes when we're in the middle of something, it feels so real because the fear is so real. And what I found for myself is when I feel that magnitude of fear, I'm usually not in the present moment. So the reality is shifted.
That is an excellent point. Yes.
So what happened in my situation was once I started kind of piecing all those pieces together and really started assessing the reality. What is the reality? Is this really a fear? Why am I fearful of these people that I love, I have been loyal to? I sense at times that they love me. Why am I feeling this fear? And so that was kind of the process for me. And then as I got older, I started realizing that that fear was not mine. It was being put on me by someone else.
Interesting.
So I kind of adopted that fear based on someone else's opinion. And the crazy thing about that is once I started realizing that and started operating from who I am, which is positive, you know, caring about people, you know, showing kindness, which I've always done regardless of that bad situation, my perspective shifted toward that fear. And I often tell people, you know, when my goal of fearless freedom became stronger and bigger than my fear, it immediately flipped.
Right.
Interesting.
And so that thing that I had feared for over 30 years, once I made the decision that this was not about me, it was something I could no longer buy into. I mean, it was almost like a light switch flip for me.
Wow.
And it was over, like clean slate over.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's awesome.
And you know, I mentioned you know, that happened to me in 9/11. So I look kind of like this virus says, you know what would you do differently now that we have this? And I believe it's a real thing. I mean, we're seeing people impacted by it, but I always go back to the perspective. What am I seeing out of this? Where am I digging deeper for myself and in myself to be at a higher level? That's what happened to me at 9/11. That day when that happened, I'll never forget, I was sitting in the tire shop. My car was up in the air getting new tires. There was nowhere I could go. And I was 10 minutes from my daughter's daycare. And, you know, we have those awakening moments. And I remember the thought flashing through my mind, this life is too short to live this much in fear. And if anything is going to change, It is for me to change it and to do something different. So what I saw from that for me is I'm a creator of anything that I want. And that fear is I'm no longer entrapped by that fear. And by Easter, which was like 4 or 5 months later, I was totally in a different house, away from that total different situation, no longer ruled by other people's fear that they were trying to put on me. But I share that because once you make a decision, I don't know the hows, the whys, the whats. All I know is that things started lining up for me in sync, and the pathway opened up to move away from that fear.
That's
And
awesome.
so I talk to a lot of people with all this virus going around too. And, I think people are starting to wake up. What would I do different in my job? What would I be doing different with my family? What can I create different for myself? And to me, that's like the biggest aha moment of this is what would you be doing different had you known that this was coming? And who are you surrounding yourself with? Like you mentioned, are they at a higher vibration of who you want to be with?
Right.
And if not, what do you need to change to do something different? And so I think for me, back to your original question, the perspective of fear shifted for me. And when it shifted everything in my life.
Right. And see, that's why I think that I asked the question, is the fear actually real? Because, depends on where you are vibrationally. Again,
right.
If you're in that vibration of fear, then yes, it's real. You're experiencing it. You're also creating the situation to be afraid of. You're creating exactly that which you're fearing in that moment of fear. So it's very real because you're putting it out there into the reality. You're creating your reality with it, right?
Right.
But as soon as you move out of that fear and move up above it, you're creating a different reality. And all of a sudden, it's no longer real.
I so agree.
Right. And so what's interesting about when you just talked about, your realization and so forth, going through this 9/11 experience, and it reminded me very much so of moving through the experience I had with my twin flame when I met my twin flame. It also caused me my spiritual awakening. And, there was a time I remember where he scared the living bejesus out of me, okay? He was a guy that came from prison, had a huge record, was knocking on my bedroom window 2 a.m. in the morning, drunk out of his ass, okay? And I didn't know what the hell he wanted because he wouldn't stay away. And I was really scared. And it was a specific conversation, actually, I remember that, actually triggered this tremendous fear in me. A fear, I was afraid deathly of him, okay? I didn't know what he was going to do or not, or what, right? What he wanted. And I remember going through this motion of several days or even a whole week, thinking to myself, I can't live like this. I got to get beyond this. I got to get beyond this fear because this is not what I can live with. And so I started questioning things in the spiritual realm, because I needed to understand where it was coming from the spiritual realm, because there was weird things going on. Like I was so deathly afraid of him, but at the same time, I was so incredibly drawn to him. And I thought to myself, oh my God, Dagmar, do you have a death wish or something, right? And so I had to actually go into the spiritual field and start asking myself questions spiritually as to what is this guy, this man doing in my life? And what was interesting? Through this process, I learned how the fear works, how it gets triggered and so forth, because it turns out that it actually triggered something in me that we had experienced together in a past lifetime that actually I needed to heal. And that was my start of really my whole journey into the whole spiritual healing field. Understanding the difference between, which part of you to trust. I didn't know which part to trust. The one part of me was so drawn to him. The other part was so afraid of him. Well, which part of me do I trust? And I was experiencing my higher self knowing, my soul knowing him. And the other part of me was my survival mechanism that was triggered as a result of pain I experienced in a past lifetime with him. See, and both of those live within you, right? And so I really got to understand the whole fear aspect and where it comes from and what to trust and what not to trust, you know? So it's an interesting thing. I would like to put up real quick the chart that I have in regards to the fear, if you guys don't mind, to kind of help you vibrationally understand where fear is. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Okay, so let me just do this real quick. Let's see if I can, oh, here it is. Can everybody see that? Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the vibration emotion tone scale, as I say. Now, if we go up here, fear is right here at 100. This is where we are on our vibration when we're experiencing fear, okay? Now, up here, when we're talking about love, you have to be all the way up here, or joy or peace, in order to experience that, okay? As long as we're here down in the fear, see how it's talking about being contracted? We contract, right? Here we're in the space of suffering. That's when we're actually limiting ourselves. And it's interesting that, you know, I heard out there recently somebody say, you know, they are restricting us, taking our freedoms away from us. The government, in other words, right, in regards to this COVID-19 pandemic. But my thought to it was, it's not they doing it to us, we're doing it to ourselves because we're in fear. So what we're doing is we're contracting here. Okay, we're restricting ourselves, we're limiting ourselves, being in fear. But when you rise up above that vibration, you go up higher, you're actually expanding. You're expanding in more possibilities. You have all of a sudden more choices. I don't know who mentioned the more choices part. And so the whole idea or goal of ascension is to rise up this tone scale up here, okay, where we're going into expanding more. And the interesting part is that up here in the high vibrations, fear doesn't exist up here, okay? That's where we can look at a situation without fear, the same exact one as you're looking at down here. And at the same time, viruses don't exist up here either. So if you're in a higher vibration, most likely you won't even attract the virus to you, or you won't catch it. That's the interesting part about this chart. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back here to our, let's see, how do I get that out of this? Okay, stop share. Oh, there we go. And I want to open it up to the rest of you guys. Does anybody have any questions on this or want to contribute anything that to our visitors? Marlene or Dina? Marlene, can you hear us?
I can. I was on mute because my pets were making noise.
I got you. No problem. So what do you think so far of this conversation? What are some of your thoughts right now?
Well, I think, you know, the whole examination of fear is interesting, and clearly this is stimulating everyone's survival mode. And I've heard some theories also that that's why people are stocking up crazily.
Exactly, right.
You know, I mean, we're really at, you know, that's the first chakra area.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I find interesting about the whole thing is that, you know, there are many of us who have examined our own fears or our own limitations or different kinds of things on a personal level. But this is globally, this is humanity being told to stop. Like everyone's being told to stop. And
stop in terms of like stop what? Stop
your activity. Our economic
mm-hmm.
is stopping. Our, you know, all of these different kinds of things we would not voluntarily do, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And there's space in that, and I think that you know, some of the things that have been said about it's a chance to reevaluate priorities. So it's a chance for people individually to reevaluate priorities, you know, families and spending time with kids and what's really important. And I think when you are facing death, I mean, I have personally some experience with that because I have been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness myself. And
Oh my goodness.
so when, I mean, it just naturally reorients your priorities. And I think everyone is getting this chance to live in a reality of uncertainty, which is happening all the time, even though we still like to be in control. And reevaluating priorities, but reevaluating priorities as a species, as a race, as a human race. I mean, not actual. And the undeniability of our interconnectedness is just right in front of us, and our undeniability of certain toxic ways that we've been living is totally in front of us too. So,
well, and, just to interrupt you real quick, what's become really obvious to me during this time, during this pandemic, is how low vibration most of us still are on the entire vibrational tone scale in terms of the ascension process needing to move up higher.
Well, yes, but I also think that there's a lot of people in different pockets who are rising, and more people, and have risen. And I sort of think of that as a net that can help the world entrain to that.
Absolutely, yes.
The world lift and entrain to that. And so, who knows what will happen if we will take this opportunity to rebuild in more sustainable and more loving ways. But we have that opportunity. We have that opportunity should we choose it.
Yes, and that's the whole idea of the ascension process, is to climb up to the love aspect of things. And I think that this whole pandemic serves us in a way of connecting with still our unresolved issues. And therefore it's bringing to the surface the things that we have not resolved, which is what the fear is all about, because it's connecting us to our pain, and that's when we're experiencing the fear. And that's only when we connect to it subconsciously or on some level can we possibly heal it and move and rise above it.
Right. Well, pain is a very good for healing and for change, because if we, would we stop all economic functioning? And I'm fully aware that that is going to be, possibly on me too, but, huge, terrible hardship in the short term on so many people. And yet, if we don't shift, we probably won't. I mean, scientists tell us, and it's true. I mean, the earth is trying to give us a big message. We didn't listen to fires. We didn't listen to this. We didn't listen to that. So, in my personal experience, the more I don't listen to messages, the bigger the whammy is. And
great. Well, thank you for your input, Marlene. I got to move on real quickly here. We have only like 10 minutes left. I wanted to ask Dina, what are your thoughts, Dina? What are your questions, your thoughts about some of the conversation we've had?
Well, I've got two, but they're very big, right?
Okay.
I believe in a dark side, and I believe that there's a group that is feeding the media and is feeding this fear and making it worse. But there's a big discussion behind that, right? But I feel like some of this is trying to push us to band together, whether it's remotely meditating or in a group, local groups, and then those groups get together on a remote session from the different areas, and we pray on one thing, not kill the virus, because that's the negative. Like Mother Teresa said, stop trying to focus on the negative, like kill the virus, focus on peace or the positive part of it. Right. That's something I've always wanted to start here where I am. And I think that one or all of you could be the leaders of that remotely as well, and just be our mentors. Sure. But that's the short version of what I had in my little head.
No, I think that's great. That's a very good point. And that's, I've heard, now on the news several times, we're fighting a war, with this unseen enemy. And I believe that we are, but the unseen enemy are us. And the war we're fighting is within our own hearts, between our fear and love. That's the war we're fighting. And I believe that, we shouldn't be focusing on killing the virus. What we should be focusing on is rising in our vibration.
Health.
And how
happiness.
to do that is basically healing our unresolved pain. That's my understanding of it, because the unresolved pain acts heavy on our soul. It's like carrying sacks of potatoes with us. The more that stuff we heal, the higher we can rise, because we actually get lighter. And I hear people say that to me all the time after healing. Oh, I feel lighter all of a sudden. Well, you just offloaded a whole sack of potatoes you've been carrying out. But that's basically my understanding of it. So any last thoughts here to Anjali and Kim around how do you perceive we should get to that unlimited life and rise above our fear?
I agree with Dina as well, and with Marlene, that whatever this is, however it's come about, it's giving us an option. We either band together and we all rise and shed that kind of stuff and do it as a collective and have the power of that collective to rise, or we'll go back to the old ways, which is selfish, self-oriented, sink or swim. I plan on swimming, and I don't care what happens to you. So no, I think I feel maybe this is the right time. Maybe this is exactly the right time for this planet and all those on the planet to be given an opportunity.
Absolutely.
To come together in unity for something that, as I said, is a level playing field. It's affecting all of us. It's not just happening in one nation. So that's how I see it, and I do believe that the unifying of our shared thoughts, our intentions, our benevolent will, I think is going to be much, much, much more powerful at combating the collective unconscious, where pandemic fear and that collectivity all resides. I agree. I think that's the only way. We have to come together.
That's awesome. Yes, I agree with that. I also want to mention real quick to Dina, just remembered that you mentioned the dark side. I wanted to say to Dina that, everything in our universe serves, including the dark side. And the dark side serves the light. When you look at dark versus light, dark means you don't have an understanding, whereas light means you do have an understanding. And it is in the space of darkness that we have an opportunity to learn. In the space of lightness, we already know everything. There is no opportunity to learn. So, and everything serves. So just giving you a little bit of a perspective on the darkness. Anyway, Kim, to you, would you like to contribute to the last thoughts here? About
Sure.
How do we best climb up into the unlimited life from this fear stuff?
Again, from my experience, I'll leave you with this. I think it's a time for us all to be brave. And I break it down with believe in yourself. R, roadmap yourself away from fear. What are you focusing on during the day? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Who are you talking to? A, believe in your abilities. You have abilities within you to rise above anything that comes against you. Or you can learn new abilities if you don't have them. And then V, view. What are you viewing? What is your goal? When we get through all of this, whether it's next week, next month, next 3 months, what views are you looking at toward new goals for yourself? And then E, expectations. I think more than ever in this state where everyone is kind of in the same place. I remember when I was my awakening, I thought, wow, hold on, everybody stop, stop the world. Does everybody see what this is, And I think with the situation that we're in, I mean, countries countries even are in the same place. Like, things have stopped and they've slowed down. And so it's expectations, you know, forget about everybody else's expectations for you. I think this is the time that we start looking within ourselves, getting our vibrations higher, expect the things and create the things that we want for ourselves. And I think in doing that, we lift ourselves. And then I always believe as we lift ourselves, we lift the other people around us, because
Absolutely.
even if they're not telling you, they're watching you. If you're in connection with people, they see you shift.
Yes.
And I know when I had that big shift on 9/11, and I know, Dagmar, you know my story, but I broke free of a religious cult after 35 years.
Wow.
I actually was married to the cult leader's nephew, and we left together as a family. And then 7 years later, I went through a very unexpected divorce. And so I share that because when I made that decision, I didn't go to other friends of mine that were in the assembly, but they were watching me. And, you know, one of the hardest things for me to break away from was, I'm going to lose all these friends. Like, I've known these friends since birth, or 5 years old, or 10 years old. And that was a hard thing for me to walk away from. And but I share that because what I gained from me stepping up and stopping a pattern of fear and bullying and emotional and mental abuse, so it wouldn't pass along to my daughter, there were over 75 to 100 people that left as a result, because they knew if I left, something was up. And so I share that because I didn't know those people were watching me. And because I left, I became some of those people's voice. And 6 months later, I hosted a reunion, and over 250 people came that were former members of that assembly. And so I share that because as we lift and we move through our fear, we are a conduit. We are a connection that other people are looking for a light. And if you can create the light inside of you and rise above whatever fear that you're having, people are watching you. And a lot of people are waiting for you to step up.
Yes.
And so who are you following? Who is shining the light to you? And how can we rise up together and be at the higher level and the biggest level of love? I mean, I think if anything, this is our time.
Yes, I absolutely totally agree with you. That's a great, you know, analogy and what you shared. And you've had some tremendous trials, girlfriend. Congratulations on all of that. And I want to say that, you know, part of also the social distancing is the opportunity for us to go inward and work on ourselves and do that inner part work that we need to do in order to rise in the vibration.
Yes.
Okay. That's really key. That's why this is all happening. See, everything serves, you know, and it's amazing because when I thought back about it, I've been already doing this for years with myself. It's very fascinating because for me, nothing much has changed, really. Okay.
Right.
It's very fascinating, you know, but anyway, so thank you all for joining. We're kind of out of time here. Thank you, Anjali and Kim, for your input, you know, from your perspective. Thank you, Marlene and Scott and Dina, for being here and sharing with us and listening to us and, you know, so forth, and sharing your bit. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and we can still stay and chat if you'd like, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now here.